Hello. In this node reference video, we're going to be covering some of the more commonly used parameters in the Visualize node. This node, and visualizers in general, are a fairly large topic, so we'll be getting more in-depth in later videos. But for now, we can start off with some basics just to get our feet on the ground. So let's jump inside and select the geometry we want to visualize and hit X to bring up our Visualize node automatically. And you can see it's dropped one down for us. You're also able to find it in the tab menu if you just type in Visualize, but the X hotkey works just as well. So what the Visualize node does is it takes the value of any specified attribute, in this case it defaults to the p value, and it allows you to visualize the values of that attribute in a manner that you specify. And right now it is defaulting to color. So this is a great way to see if your attributes are behaving as you expect them to. And right now our geometry is rainbow because, as I said, the visualizer defaults to the p attribute. And if we come over to the Visualizers tab, you can see that this is where that is controlled. So what the Visualize node is doing right now is visualizing P, and since P is a vector, it's split up into X, Y, and Z channels. And so it's taking those channels and it's placing them into R, G, and B color channels respectively. So the X value is turned into red, the Y to green, and the Z to blue. And so that's why our geometry is appearing the way that it is. You're able to control which attribute is being visualized here in the attribute channel. So if we were to change this to something like the normals, you can see that our viewport has updated accordingly to reflect the values of our normals attribute. But for now we can stick with P. Now this is great for visualizing vector attributes like position, but what if you only want to visualize a specific component of a vector attribute? Say you only want to view the X position or the Y or the Z. Well, you're able to do that as well. Come up to the color type parameter and change from attribute as is to ramped attribute. This will make it confused a little bit, and you can see that the rainbow gets kind of diluted. And this is because it's expecting a float attribute now that we've changed the color type. And we can give it what it wants by scrolling down a bit and coming over to this treat as scalar option. And a scalar value is simply a singular value, whereas something like a vector value is really three values in one. So we just tick this on. There we go. And now you can see we are visualizing the X position of each of the points on Flippy. So if we scroll down, you're able to also see the color ramp that is controlling this. So if we pull this in, the viewport will update accordingly. And so now, going from blue to red, we are visualizing increasing X positions. And as we change this component slider, we will now be visualizing the Y position and then the Z position. So a great way to isolate different components of your vector attributes. But let's say you want to visualize a vector attribute specifically as a direction instead of a color. Let's say you want to set up the orientation of some points that you want to copy your geometry to, and you want to be able to see how they'll be oriented ahead of time. This can be hard to do when it's really just kind of a mess of rainbows on your geometry, but the Visualize node has you covered there as well. So let's come over to this second example, and here we just have a sphere, and I've given these spheres some normals. And here in this point wrangle, I've used those normals to generate a custom vector attribute that can be controlled with this slider down here. So if we hit X, you can see the Visualize node comes over here, and it retains the values that we set over here on Flippy. You'll also notice that it has not created a new node for us, it's just taken the existing one. So that's a good thing to be aware of when you start working with this yourself. So let's select our Visualize node, and the attribute we want to visualize in this case is called foo. So let's come up to the here we go. Let's come up to the attribute channel and change from P to foo. And let's change our color type back to attribute as is, so we get these rainbows again. And let's turn off the normals as well. Now you can see, as I play with this slider, that our viewport is updating as it should, but it's still kind of hard to see what's going on. So if we come back to our Visualize node and change the type from color to marker, it immediately floods your viewport with text. And this is because the default values on the marker type let you actually see the values of the attribute itself. So this particular point has a foo value of -0.12 in the X, positive 0.88 in the Y, and positive 0.44 in the Z. So this allows you to just straight up see the values of your specified attribute. But we want directions, and so to do that we can come over to the style and change it from text to vector. And now you can see we are visualizing our vector attributes as simple vectors. And if this is too long for you, you can scroll down in this very tiny window here and change the length scale until you're happy. There we go. So now if we come back up to the point wrangle and play with this blend parameter, you can see that our foo attribute is updating in the viewport accordingly. And so this is a great way to visualize some of the more commonly used vector attributes. Alright, so there's some very useful ways to visualize your attributes, whether they're vector, float, or anything in between. In the next video, we're going to begin breaking this node down piece by piece until you have a full understanding of everything that it has to offer.